A good portion of what I'm going to say you've already heard. But you know, I was a school teacher too. And as a school teacher, you learn that you have to just repeat and repeat and repeat. So when I repeat what you've already heard, then you can chalk it up that I was a school teacher. And so today, it's my honor to pay a tribute to the life of Al. And we're here in this beautiful park, which you've already heard a lot about. He joined the Garden Club in 2003, which was his introduction to all of these things, Waukewa that you've heard about, and the Florida Federation of Garden Clubs and all these sorts of things. So these were all new to him after 2003. But he was around quite a while before 2003. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what life was like for Al before 2003. Part of my life and my family's life was very integrated with the Latinos. My husband Jack and I met Al and Jane when Phil over there was a baby in their arms at Temple Terrace United Methodist Church. You've heard the church mentioned before, and it played a very large part in their life as well as mine and Jack's. They were relatively new to Temple Terrace, and Jack and I were too. Jack grew up in Tampa, but not on this side of town. Jane, Al, and Jack and I immediately became friends. We met through a group at the church who ate together. There were 10 couples who were to eat together every month. We met in each other's houses, and we laughed and talked and ate a lot. That group met every month for over 50 years. And we still probably would be, except death and illnesses and what have you have taken its toll. And so the group no longer is together. Al and I and one or two others are the only ones that were left. Many close relationships came out of that every month's meeting, or eating. We called it our eating group a lot of times. But Jane and Al and Jack and I became especially close. We did all sorts of things together. At first it was just Jack and me, and Al and Jane and Phil. In a few years, within a few months, we each had a new baby, a girl. And Mary Allison and Carolyn and Phil spent many hours playing together, either at their house or at my house. We had Easter egg hunts, went to the picnic, we had picnics, we went to the beach, we did all sorts of things. But one of the things that always happened was that Christmas Eve they came to our house, and as Heather mentioned, her dad played the piano and sang. Well, Jack played the piano and sang. So that was a big interest. So there was always lots of singing and playing when the two of them were together. And last year, close to Christmas time, my youngest daughter said to me, "You know what, I really miss Mama." And I said, "What?" And she said, "I really miss Mom and Dad. I really miss Daddy and Al singing at Christmas time." And I thought, that's a wonderful, happy memory. And our dinners, I saw a picture of pecan pies in the video just now. We always had a pecan pie on our Christmas dinner table that Al and Jane had made. So that was a tradition, was having their pecan pie. We traveled together, as Heather said. We celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, new babies, all these things we celebrated together. We also consoled each other when illnesses and deaths entered our families. Today I give a tribute to Al, but you can't talk about Al and his family life without talking about Jane. So I'm going to talk about Jane for a few minutes. Al was a very loving husband and father. His world was built around his family, and through the years, they became partly my family too. My kids put them all together, Jane, Al, Carolyn, and Phil. One statement. If we were having guests, And they listed them. They always listed all four of them at the same time. But Jane and Al were very much their own person. Jane was smart, funny, happy, very, very social. She had a very responsible position with the state of Florida Department of Human Resources. And she was highly respected in this community and, again, our church. She was very much a part of the church. Al was the studious one, dealing with details, planning, organizing, and things like that. He loved to travel and loved plants, as you all have already said. And he was happy in the kitchen, and Jane was happy that he was in the kitchen. Al's yard reflected, along with these other things, his love for plants. He, for many years, had a beautiful rose garden and became a real expert in growing roses. He developed then the love of orchids, and they've already talked about orchids and how he enjoyed and had a greenhouse and many orchids. There are lots of places in Temple Terrace, if you started naming them, where his influence is very obvious. At Lightfoot Center, not Lightfoot Center, yes, Lightfoot Center on the corner of 56th and Bush, there's a beautiful little garden in the back that Al designed, and with the help of the garden club, he put in a lot of hard work to get that pretty little garden that's in the back of Lightfoot Center. As they said to earlier, that Al was at USF, he was a professor. One of the first person who was hired at USF was a guy named Jim Ray, Dr. Jim Ray. And Al, I don't know if that Al was the second one or not, but he came along very quick. He was 17th. Is it? Okay. Well, Jim was the first one, and Al was in his department. He probably hired him right out of FSU. And so Al and Jim were in the beginnings of the University of South Florida, laying out the grounds, naming streets, doing all sorts of things that are very exciting. And as they said, he was a professor, but he retired as a dean out at USF. Jane and Al were, and again I use them both together, Jane and Al were not only influential with their own kids, they were with mine too. My two were very, very involved in sciences. And Al and Jane were always the people they asked for recommendations, references, help with science projects, and all this sort of thing. So they played a big role in the life of my children. I also mentioned in my writing that Al was happy in the kitchen. It was a lot of work, and you'd see him and he would all be wet with perspiration, but he really liked it. And as Heather said, he came from an Italian background, and his mother ran a restaurant. I met his mother in the restaurant before I knew Al, which took me several years to put it together that I knew his mother. One of the things that he made that I loved, it was one of my favorites, was cannolis. You remember cannolis? Making them. Right after he retired, he did, as Heather mentioned, he did the senior lunches at church. Every month, Jane helped him with the organization, with the program part, but he did all the cooking, and it was always a neat lunch. Through the years, my family and his family just were always in contact with each other. We talked, we shared news, good times, bad times, and now your family's grown, you have more people to love. Up until now, I haven't mentioned Heather, because, you know, we had many years together before Heather came along. But when Heather was born, a new world developed. It was a happy day when she came. And Al and Jane had retired, as she mentioned. They had just retired about that time. And so they spent many, many, many hours with Heather. And she brightened their day. One of the things that she mentioned and I had written about was that somewhere along the line, Heather wanted, I don't know exactly how it came about, you said a Girl Scout project to make a meditation garden at Temple Terrace United Methodist Church. It's beautiful. And I tell you this, if you haven't seen it, sometime go by. As you go into the church, it's just to the left. And it has plants from that are the same as you find in the Holy Land. It has, it's a very inspirational spot, and people whose loved ones' names are there find it a real nice spot to meditate. There's a lot I could say about Al, since I knew him for so long. And Jane. Jane was very special, and they were a very close couple. I was trying to think this morning if I ever heard them disagree. And all couples do. But I think they got along really well. They were different. They had expertise in different areas, but they complemented each other. He respected what her life as a professional worker with HRS, and she respected his as a professor, and it was really neat. He was, and my last sentence that I wrote about him was that he was a down-to-earth sort of person who always spoke truth. It was not given to frivolity. He was a true friend, honest, and always willing to give his time and knowledge when asked. But he was not a person who tried to show off his skills or his intellect. He was humble and unassuming. He seemed to always bring out the best in others and happy to give praise as well. To his family, I say he loved you deeply, and you brought much happiness to him.
Thank you, Ms. Naki. And now the family asked, certainly we've heard a lot of good stories and interesting things. I think most of you know, we've made it aware, there's a camera set up over by the fountain over there. Think how nice it would be for you to share a memory of Al with them and be part of something that they have as remembrance of not only his life this day and his impact on your life, but they asked if anyone had a story that they'd like to share. The mic is open if you'd like to come up and give a brief word. It's certainly not necessary, and we have the opportunity over there. Okay, the family has prepared some.
Well, as you know, he was the president of the Florida Federation of Garden Clubs. That's all the garden clubs in the state of Florida. And I happened to take over his job. And when I do see him in heaven, I'm going to beat him for not staying here with me for the 2 years that I'm going to be president. Oh my goodness, I miss him every day. I think of him and think, oh, what would Al do? He was so precious. But a couple things I would like to say about Al, and I don't have just one story. He was just so precious. His chocolate cakes were to die for. Oh my goodness, they were so good. And I remember going on tour. There would be 4 of us driving on a tour of the state of Florida with the Garden Club, and we would have to drop him off on the weekends at Heather's so that he could help her with her biology because she had a test the next week. And he was so excited to do that. And then we would pick him up again on Monday and off we'd go for the week. And he just loved stopping at Heather's and helping her. I loved to watch his tummy shake when he would laugh. He would get tickled and that little tummy would just be going up and down, just so cute. His stories about his trips with his family were always so interesting. You think, where is he going with this? And it was just always so interesting. I enjoyed that. His ties with FSU. Oh, what a smart man. I tell you, he knew the college to go to. Yes. And I know that Jane is so happy. I know Heather wanted him to stay on this earth, but I said, you know, Jane is just pulling, she's a very strong woman and just pulling him up there. At Wekiva, I would like to thank Al. Every Friday, we would drop the kids off with the canoes at King's Landing, and then John, the director that spoke, and Al started this. He started going to breakfast afterwards. We didn't go right back to the camp after we dropped the kids off with the canoes. We would go to breakfast. And Al started that. So I thank Al for that. I enjoy those breakfasts. The Egyptian rides on the camels. Heather, I hate to tell you, he did not like that. I know he didn't, but he would always, whenever that came up, he would always say, "Oh, I hated those camels. They would never let you off unless you paid them extra." So when I had gotten the hibiscus, and the man that hybridized it, he always said, "When are we going to name it? When are we going to name it?" I said, "Well, we can't name it yet because Al, I don't want him to know about it." And so we kept putting it off. And so then I called Al and I said, "Al, what would you like to name your hibiscus?" Or I said, "Your plant, if you happen to get one." And he said, "Oh, I'd like to name it Woodsy Al." And I thought, "Oh, that's so perfect." So I called up the guy that hybridized it. He's the one that has to register it. And I said, "Okay, you haven't named it yet, have you?" He said, "Oh, yes, I did. I named it Alateen." I said, "Oh." Then I didn't tell him that he wanted it named Woodsy Al, but he was always thinking of Camp Wekiwa. And to me, Al stands for always loyal. He was always loyal. No matter what he was doing, he was always loyal. So thank you.
Hello? Papa, I miss you more than you could have ever known. I miss our random conversations about life, traveling, your days back in Connecticut. Days where we talked only about food, how you love to cook for other people. I miss the days where we had not much to talk about, so you would repeat a story and not remember you had told me just an hour ago. I miss your kind heart and your humble character. You taught me how to put family first, how if there's anything in this world, it's your family that comes first. I admired your will to always stay on top of what was going on in my life, how you considered me family and a son, how you made it a priority to help Heather achieve her goals and fulfill her lifelong dream of becoming a doctor, no matter what it took, supporting her emotionally and financially every step of the way. Your sacrifice is truly a blessing. You help me think about my mom, my dad, my sister, and niece when they aren't here, and help me think of ways I can become a better son, brother, uncle, or boyfriend. You are a role model to me in so many different ways. You inspire me to be a great parent one day, the way you called your son and daughter every single day and always made sure they were happy and doing all right. You make me want to be a better man, how even at the age of 84, you would walk across the entire house and try to move a heavy box rather than placing the burden on someone else. You taught me how to save money and to value it, how you would save up for an entire year to attain something that nowadays most people can buy now with one click. Oh, and don't forget free next day delivery. Alexa, play notifications. How someone so courteous could take us on wonderful vacations to Italy and French Polynesia. I truly appreciate you for valuing experiences over material things. Finally, may your pure soul rest peacefully in heaven with Nana. I know you will have the biggest, most beautiful garden up there. Sing, dance, and play the piano to your heart's content, and enjoy the sweetest, tastiest, most decadent desserts. Love, your best friend, McKinley.
Yeah, so this is the time when I say, okay, anyone want to follow that? Yeah. The family thanks you all for your presence here today and for your outpouring of love for them and support. They have some little favors for you as you leave today, a little thank you and remembrance for being here today to celebrate Al's life. So fitting that a monarch butterfly floats through the air, even as we come to this part where I'm very compelled to tell you that I am not closing this celebration of Al's life. I'm charging you with continuing it. God bless you, and thank you for being a part of this wonderful day.